This list of Russian admirals includes the admirals of all ranks, serving in the Russian Imperial Navy, the Soviet Navy and the modern Russian Navy. See also the categories: Category Imperial Russian Navy Admirals and Category Soviet Admirals. Alphabetical list. Pavel Sergeyevich Abankin, Admiral, Head of Naval Academy, Deputy Navy Minister for Shipbuilding and Armaments, Head of the Hydrographic Directorate. Abdulahat Abbasov, Rear Admiral, Head of Nuclear Submarine Training Center, Chief of Navy Combat Training. Vladimir Antonovich Alafuzov, Admiral, Chief of the Main Navy Staff, Soviet Navy. Vladimir Nikolaevich Alexeyev, Admiral, First Deputy Chief of the Main Navy Staff. Nikolai Nikolaevich Amelko, Admiral, Commander of the Pacific Fleet. Fyodor Apraksin, General Admiral, won the Battle of Gangat during the Great Northern War, led the Russian Navy in the Russo-Persian War. B. Nikolai Efimовich Bassisty, Admiral, Commander of the Black Sea Fleet. Fadi Bellingshausen, Admiral, notable participant of the first Russian circumnavigation, leader of another Russian circumnavigation during which he and his second-in-command Mikhail Lazarev discovered the continent of Antarctica. Axel Berg, Admiral and scientist, major developer of radiolocation and cybernetics. Ivan Botas, Admiral in charge of the galley fleet under Peter the Great. Laskarina Bubalina, Greek naval commander, heroine of the Greek War of Independence in 1821, and posthumously an admiral of the Imperial Russian Navy. See Vladimir Chernavin, Fleet Admiral, Commander of the Soviet Northern Fleet, the last Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy, first and only Commander-in-Chief of the CIS Navy. Vasily Chichagov, Admiral, Polar Explorer, won the battles of Åland, Reval and Vyborg Bay, effectively bringing the Russo-Swedish War of 1788–90 to an end. Viktor Cherkov, Admiral, Commander of the Baltic Fleet, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy. Cornelius Kreuss, Vice Admiral, the first Commander of the Russian Baltic Fleet. D. Fyodor Dubasov, Admiral, placed Port Arthur and Dalny under Russian control. Chilev Mikhailovich Gala, Admiral, Chief of the Main Navy Staff. Mikhail Mikhailovich Golitsyn, General Admiral from 1756 to 1762. Arseny Grigorovich Golovko, Admiral, Commander of the Northern Fleet. Sergei Georgievich Gorshkov, Fleet Admiral of the Soviet Union, led a number of landing operations in the Black Sea during World War II. The Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy during most of the Cold War and for almost 30 years. Samuel Grieg, Admiral, won the Battle of Chesma during the Russo-Turkish War and the Battle of Hogland during the Russo-Swedish War. Ivan Grigorovich, Admiral, Chief of Port Arthur's port during the Siege of Port Arthur, Russia's last naval minister. Felix Nikolaevich Gromov, Fleet Admiral, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy, previously Commander of the Northern Fleet. Thomas Gordon, Admiral, Governor and Commander-in-Chief at Kronstadt from 1727 until his death in 1741. Ivan Isakov, Fleet Admiral of the Soviet Union, served during World War II. Oceanographer. Vladimir Istomin, Rear Admiral, fought in the Battle of Navarino, hero of the Siege of Sevastopol during the Crimean War, died in action. J. John Paul Jones, Rear Admiral, active with the Black Sea Fleet after the American Revolution. K. Vladimir Afanasievich Kasatonov, Fleet Admiral, First Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy. Mikhail Alexandrovich Kedrov, Vice Admiral, who led White Russian forces, including the evacuation of Wrangel's fleet from the Crimea as the Russian Civil War came to a close. Alexander Kolchak, Admiral, Polar Explorer, Commander of the Black Sea Fleet, a leader of the White Movement during the Russian Civil War. Nikolai Kolomeyev, Vice Admiral, polar explorer, a hero of the Russo-Japanese War, later led White Russian naval forces in the Baltic during the Russian Civil War. Vladimir Konovalov, Rear Admiral, distinguished submarine commander during World War II. Vladimir Kornilov, Vice Admiral, fought in the Battle of Navarino, hero of the Siege of Sevastopol, died in the Battle of Malakov. Nikolai Krab, Admiral and Naval Minister, co-founded the first Russian naval bases in Primorsky Krai, oversaw the development of naval artillery and ironclad ships. Vladimir Kuroydov, Fleet Admiral, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy. Nikolai Gerasimovich Kuznetsov, Fleet Admiral of the Soviet Union, the Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy during World War II. L. Mikhail Lazarev, Admiral, three-time circumnavigator and discoverer of Antarctica, destroyed 5 enemy warships as a commander of Azov in the Battle of Navarino. Tutor of Nakhimov, Kornilov, and Istomin. Semin Mikhailovich Lobov, Fleet Admiral, commander of the Northern Fleet. M. Thomas Mackenzie, Rear Admiral, entered Russian Navy in 1736 at Archangel. Father of Rear Admiral Thos Mackenzie, founder of Sebastopol. Thomas Mackenzie, Rear Admiral, founder of Sebastopol, 1783, first Commander-in-Chief of the Black Sea Fleet. Awarded Knight Order of St. George IV class for his bravery in successfully navigating a fire ship into the enemy, which contributed to the destruction of the Turkish fleet in the Russo-Turkish War at Chesma 5–7 July 1770. Stepan Makarov, Vice Admiral, inventor and explorer, performed the first ever successful torpedo attack, built the first torpedo boat tender and the first polar icebreaker, author of the insubmersibility theory, killed in the Russo-Japanese War when his ship struck a naval mine. Pavel Maksutov, Rear Admiral, hero of the Battle of Sinop and the Siege of Sevastopol. Vladimir Masurin, Fleet Admiral, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy. Vladimir Vasilievich Mikhailin, Admiral, Commander of the Baltic Fleet. N. Pavel Nakhimov, Admiral, circumnavigated the world with Mikhail Lazarev, fought in the Battle of Navarino, annihilated the Ottoman fleet in the Battle of Sinope, commander and hero at the Siege of Sevastopol. Charles Henry of Nassau-Siegen, Admiral, won several battles during the Russo-Turkish War and the Russo-Swedish War. O. Alexei Grigorovich Orlov, commander of the Russian fleet during the Russo-Turkish War of 1768–1774, victor of the Battle of Chesma. Philip Oktyabsky, Admiral, commander of the Black Sea Fleet, a leader of defense in the Siege of Sevastopol. Alexander Yevstafevich Oral, Admiral, commander of the Baltic Fleet. Pyotr Alexandrovich Panteleyev, Admiral, commander of the Pacific Fleet. Pavel Perelishin, Rear Admiral, hero of the Battle of Sinop and the Siege of Sevastopol. Vasily Ivanovich Platonov, Admiral, commander of the Northern Fleet. Andrei Popov, Admiral, hero of the Crimean War, led a Russian flotilla to support the Union during the American Civil War. Designed the first true Russian battleship, Pyotr Veliky. Our Anatoly Ivanovich Rasiko, Admiral, Head of Defense Ministry, Main Directorate of Navigation and Oceanography. Mikhail Reyniker, Vice Admiral, Major, 19th century hydrographer. José de Ribas, Vice Admiral, founder of Odessa, hero of the Siege of Ismail. Pyotr Record, Admiral, head of the Russian Navy squadrons blockaded the Dardanelles during the Russo-Turkish War, participated in the civil conflict in Greece, and defended Kronstadt during the Crimean War. Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich, General Admiral and Naval Minister during the Russo-Japanese War. Grand Duke Konstantin Nikolaevich, General Admiral and statesman, oversaw the rapid transition of the Russian Navy to ironclad warships. Zinovy Rozhestvensky, Vice Admiral, commander during the Russo-Japanese Japanese War, wounded in the Battle of Tsushima. Alexei Senyavin re-established the Don military flotilla and played a crucial role in Russia's gain on access to the Black Sea. Dmitry Senyavin, Admiral, won the battles of the Dardanelles and Athos against Ottomans during the Napoleonic Wars. Norm Senyavin, Vice Admiral, won the Battle of Ozal during the Great Northern War. Nikolai Dmitrievich Sergeyev, Fleet Admiral, Chief of the Main Navy Staff, First Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy. Peter von Savas chaired the Russian Admiralty Board in 1728–32. Nikolai Ivanovich Smirnov, Fleet Admiral, Commander of the Pacific Fleet. Grigory Spiridov, Admiral, destroyed the Ottoman fleet in the Battle of Chesma during the Russo-Turkish War. Tijon de Traverse, Admiral, commanded the Russian Black Sea Fleet and Russian Baltic Fleet, organized early Russian circumnavigations. Vladimir Tributes, Admiral, commander of the Soviet Baltic Fleet, a leading navy commander during the siege of Leningrad, led the Soviet evacuation of Tallinn. Fyodor Ushakov, the most illustrious Russian admiral of the 18th century, Saint, won the battles of Fyodorny, Kerch Strait, Tendra and Cape Kalakra during the Russo-Turkish War, single-handedly carved out the Greek Septinsular Republic, did not lose a single ship in 43 battles. Vladimir Vysotsky, Admiral, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy. Marko Vovnovich, one of the founders of the Black Sea Fleet. Georgy Yegorov, Fleet Admiral, Commander of the Northern Fleet. Ivan Yumashev, Admiral, a reclaimed southern Sakhalin and Kuril Islands for the USSR during the Soviet-Japanese War. Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy in the late 1940s. Z. Vasily Zavoyko, fought in the Battle of Navarino, twice circumnavigated the globe, explored the estuary of the Amur River, repelled the superior British French forces in the siege of Petropavlovsk during the Crimean War. Matija Zedmajevich, Vice Admiral, hero of the battles of Gangat and Grengam during the Great Northern War.